Welcome everyone to the Purple Charm Experience. I am your host, Charmyra E. Fleming, but you can call me Mai. And today I have a special guest for my Ask the Author portion of the podcast. I'm so delighted to connect with another author. During this particular segment of the podcast, I love to basically take some of the more frequently asked questions of authors and give my perspective. But today I have the distinct pleasure of having another author on to give their perspective of some of these frequently asked questions, in addition to sharing their own experiences as an author and as a writer as well. So without further delay, I'm so excited to have this gentleman on today. And I hope that you find the discussion insightful and engaging, and that you go out and purchase his book as well. Today, I have the author of Back to Dixie, Mr. Len Hyde. Welcome, sir, to the podcast.
Thank you, Charmyra. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm really excited. I was saying that talking about this book is one of my favorite things to do. So any chance I get, I'm in.
Oh, I'm telling you, this book is amazing. I think from the moment that we connected, and I have to shout out how we connected through the Black Writers Collective, just amazing platform. And I had the wonderful opportunity to, basically post that I would love any authors that are interested to come on the podcast. And Mr. Len Hyde was one of the first to reach out to me and respond. And I'm just delighted and so blessed and thankful to have him here today. I will say, as soon as we connected, I went immediately started looking up everything about you, found you on Google, on Amazon, started following your author's page. And immediately after I read the synopsis for the book, I purchased it. I was like, I didn't even want to finish reading. I just went ahead and purchased it. I was like, this book looks like it's going to be good. And from the moment the first few pages of chapter 1, it was, first of all, let me just say, this book is a trigger, so it's going to trigger you for sure. But I was so taken by the storytelling in off the bat from the first chapter. I feel like you captured the voice of the youth of these young gentlemen in the first chapter, their relationship as friends, and then also the social climate that they're living in. But I also found the connection of the parallels to today, and so it hit me like a ton of bricks. I won't spoil it for you guys, because that first chapter it will grip you. And if you're not gripped by the first chapter to read this book, something's wrong with you, because I couldn't put it down as soon as I started reading. And I just want to say thank you for this book, because what the things that we're living through today, I feel like it is so prophetic through this book. And I just wanted to know, like, first of all, please share with my audience a little bit about yourself, about how this book inspired you. I won't share I'll let you share how you were inspired to write it, but yeah, just give us some background on, your journey and how you came to write this book, because it's amazing.
Thank you so much. That's really kind of you. I need to do more podcasts, because this is so uplifting. I'm like ready to write book number 2 with this. But if you can believe it, the idea from the book came way back in the 90s. I was part of a writers group. Actually, there's only 3 of us that were part of this group, but we challenged each other to really stretch our creative skills. And there was this rumor going around at that point that Black people would lose the right to vote unless Congress ratified it again, that it was temporary. And that was just such a gripping thought.
Right.
it captured me, and it forced me to go in and do some research to figure out, is this true? And you know, and back in those days in the 90s, it was a little bit, you know, more challenging to go and do that type of research, but I found out that it wasn't really true.
Right.
That there were some nuances to it, but the idea haunted me. The what would happen if Black people lost the right to vote, and the being a creative, and as you know, Charmyra, and our imagination, that kind of took off, and
Right.
all of a
Right.
sudden I had a title for the book before I even
Wow.
wrote anything. So I was like, oh, it's going to go back to Dixie. I
Right.
was like,
Right.
this is back to Dixie, and my friend was like, yeah, that's the title for the book.
It's that title. It works.
Thank you so much. And so, but I felt at the time that it was such a fantastic story, that it was fantasy, really, you know, that people would have a hard time connecting how the story transpires at that point in time. And so I and then, you know, life happened, you know, where, you know, I was young in my accounting career, and had a young family, and
Yeah.
you know, you kind of get engrossed in that, and you forget, I think, you know, how much joy you find from writing.
Right.
And then, you know, you're writing technical stuff, and memos, and that sort of stuff, and the creative side of it just isn't there. So it wasn't until the last 3 or 4 years, I should say, where the climate, you know, in the country changed, and folks just, I think, got so comfortable with hate, and
Yes.
it became acceptable in social media, you know, things that people used to maybe they felt it, but they would, you know, kind of keep it in their home,
Right.
you know, they wouldn't just go on rants and protest and so forth, just, you know, letting everyone know how
Right.
much you hate. And the empowerment that was given to that sort of rhetoric, and how that resonated with the sort of world that I had in mind in Back to Dixie. And I was talking to that same friend from back then, and he was like, you know, Len, with everything going on here, with the police brutality, and the loss of Black lives, and the disregard to underrepresented people, and it was just, he said, now's the time for Back to Dixie.
I agree. I completely agree. Like, I look at Duke and I was thinking, oh my gosh, he's Trump. And I like this book. It's almost scary in the way, in that it is prophetic to today's social and political climate, because I mean, I'm sitting here reading and I'm like, this actually could happen. Like, we're on the verge of, I mean, they just overturned Roe versus Wade. Like, what else? Like, what,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
all of the things that you're discussing in this book is just like, even from that first chapter with the mob, I thought about January 6th, the
yeah,
insurrection.
yeah.
And I mean, you know, and not for nothing, we have, like, it feels like that could happen to any one of us at any given time in this climate right now.
Yeah,
And so,
it does happen.
yeah.
You know, and a lot of times we don't hear those stories. And, you know, I knew chapter one would be hard hitting.
Yeah.
And when you spend a career in corporate America, which I did,
Me too.
and
Still
then
there.
you too as well. So how it is. Certain things you just don't talk about in that environment.
Right.
So I worked with a lot of people, and when I told them I was writing a book, they were like, "Oh, I'm going to get this book." These are people that I don't know if they
Until
saw
they
that
read that
side
premise.
of yeah. And I, they get this in chapter 1, just hits them right in the face right away. And I've heard from some of them that I didn't know if I could continue reading after chapter 1.
I think it behooves you, and it's almost like in your best interest to continue reading, because not only is it reads very well too, and it's like a playbook for what we're living through. Like I mean, for both sides in a sense. I'm like, how is he able to think from I'm looking at Strong America, like the Republicans, and then scale up like the Democrats, and like how it's like the ability for you to be able to think on both sides of the spectrum and see the story the way it is, and literally map out what could be in parallel to what you're living through. How was that for you?
That part of it just came naturally. I think, I always, try to look at different perspectives.
Right.
And, and try to be the devil's advocate that, what makes people feel this way. And, even someone that's just racist,
Yes.
They have their justifications, it may be crazy, sadistic, but they're able to justify how they feel.
Right.
So I had to try to look at it from that perspective, that, what drives someone to feel this way, to be able to justify that one group is better than the next, and to have disregard to a whole group of people based on race. And so, I initially I had a lot of pushback, from the social media, people thinking I was promoting, the Scale Act and reparations for Black people and so forth. And I was really taken aback by the amount of visceral that I received, because of this was a work of fiction.
Right.
But I also penned the National Workfare Act in that book, and you're going to find out more about that as you read through. But someone who creates that act, can't be considered a liberal liberal racist, was what they called me.
I think one of the wonderful things about the way that you write that I loved about the story is how literally within the first chapter into the first to the third chapter, as I'm reading, I literally went through multiple emotions, from sadness to happiness, from happiness to sadness to anger to I need to get involved, get engaged, get active, because I'm looking at all this stuff, and I'm reading these things, and I'm like, this could happen, and we're on the verge. And then also, I wanted to ask you, when you think about what the book has become, over the course of you writing it, what would you tell your younger self in the 90s that was inspired to tell the story about what it could become?
Yeah.
And in this particular, like, what it could become if I'll just leave it there, what it could become, because I think, at that time, yeah, we was living and do different things, but what would you tell yourself back then, what you know now about how this book, what it turned
Yeah.
into?
I would say to not be afraid,
Yeah.
I think, the kid who thought of that book was afraid of what others would think, what the judgments that would come for having written this book. So
Mm-hmm.
the best piece of advice I would have given myself is to don't be afraid, and to use your authentic voice,
Yes.
and to trust it, and write it and publish it.
Right.
Go ahead. And I look for every reason not to,
Mm.
at that point. And I would think it was just the fear of, how folks would judge the subject matter, the plot,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. And yeah, I didn't
The
have the courage at that point, I think.
you spoke about the visceral reaction to people's initial reaction to reading the story. Do you feel that is the reaction that they had today is what you were afraid of then about how the story could be, or what the story could be? Or do you feel like now having the book come out, and that even though they have this visceral reaction to it, do you feel like you're more equipped today to be able to handle that versus then,
Yeah,
even if you
yeah.
did have the courage to go with it then?
Yeah, I think definitely. So now, I've grown to realize that people are gonna think what they
Yeah,
want, and
that's
and
true.
say what they want, right? And
Hmm.
and you just gotta. It's tough,
Yeah,
So you just gotta do what you do to be happy,
right.
and chase your happiness, your bliss, and not worry about what anyone else thinks. And so yeah, it was that understanding that I have now that I wish I had before, that
Yeah,
just do your thing,
right.
whatever your thing is, just do it. And don't care what other people might think about your art, and how you choose to express yourself. Just do your thing.
Now, what do you feel, and what do you, how, like, I know what inspired the story. I know it was inspired by a rumor, but what motivates you to write? What gets you like really engaged to get out there and just, to write? Do you write on on a regular basis about other things? Or what do you enjoy about writing?
I enjoy, um I can't say that I love writing itself,
Mm-hmm.
um but I love when my writing impacts people.
Right.
Um, I think I'm a people person, and
Mhm.
writing, when the act of writing is a lonely
Yes.
process, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
shut everyone else off, and you're in this imaginary
Zone.
world.
Yep.
And sometimes you get on a zone that you're writing something, and you're just there, and you're chuckling with the jokes, and that
Mm-hmm.
that those times I love writing.
Me
But when
too.
you're trying to find that inspiration, and trying to solve a problem in the story, and you're alone, the writing could be work.
Right.
But I love when, like you say, that you felt anger, and joy, and happiness, and that you felt all of these things. Because when I hear that, and when I see that, that is so powerful to me,
Mm-hmm.
that I could group together some words, and put them on a paper, and impact someone's emotions. I crave that feeling.
That's one of the things that I love to do when I write, is be able to touch every one of your senses. I write romance novels, and so that is what I love to do. I love when people tell me that oh my gosh, I cried when at that part of the book, or oh, I just love when the characters fell in love right there. That really, got me. I am that type of writer. I love to pull at your heartstrings, and I love to make you feel every single emotion and sensory. I love to, touch all your sensory feels. And so I get it, and that's why I connected with it immediately out the gate. And so I also wanted to ask you, what was your process for writing the book? Like, from I know like some people from a technical standpoint, like for myself, sometimes I like to mind map my stories, or how did you come up and develop these characters, and how did you live in the story as you wrote it, so that you can make it as real as it turned out?
Well, thank you for that. I usually outline things. It came from my I must say that I benefited, my writing career benefited from my years in accounting and finance, because I break out the spreadsheet
Me too.
at first.
I'm in finance too.
I break it out, and I outline scene by scene, and and I put on the next row, what do I want to accomplish, who's in this scene, and then I move to the next one, and then I break it out into a 3-act sort of play. Right, the beginning where I set everything up, and then you establish that arc in the middle, and then you resolve it. And the thing about this trilogy is that I saw it as 3 books, so I had to break it out 3 books in 3 acts, and then break out each book into those 3 acts, and go from there.
So are the other two aren't written yet, right?
No, they're not.
Len, what are you doing?
The thing about this, I thought writing was going to be the hard part.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how much time and effort we have to spend on the business, the publishing, the promotion, the marketing side of this. But one thing that I've been doing that's been fun is that from a lot of feedback that I got, that they said that they read the book and saw it so visually, that I translated it into a screenplay.
Oh my goodness, that's what I want to do. Okay, we have to talk about that offline, because I want to know how you did that, because I'm trying to do that for my 3.
Right on. I have some lessons learned, so I'll tell you what not to do. Okay. And then get into what I actually did that worked. So that was fun. Wow. When I look at it. So I'm in the background now, just trying to get some connections from that side of it as well.
This will be a great book, like a great movie or story, or I literally can see them, the boys at the beginning in their outfits, going to the show. I mean, going to the dance. Like, I can see it all. So like, I'm a visual person anyway. So whenever I write, I like to set the scene so that you feel like, I've had people tell me that they felt like they were literally there. And the first 3 of my books took place in Boston. And so some of the people that read the book told me, oh my gosh, I felt like I've been to Boston.
Wow.
And so, because I love to capture actual locations that I've either eaten at or I've been to. One of the things that I do love to do as well is different Black businesses that I've bought items from. I mention them in my books from time to time. So I like to acknowledge, from our community, people that are connected with. That way it makes it an opportunity for, if people ask me, oh, you remember that candle that you spoke about in chapter 17? Is that real? Yes, actually it is. Wow. The vendor is actually a real business.
Idea.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, so I like to do that, because there's a couple of vendors that I connected with through my writing process, actually on Instagram, after writing my first book that I mentioned in my second book, and they're real businesses out of Boston.
Wow, that is great.
Yeah.
I did that a lot for people that I've known along the ways, because in my spreadsheet too, it has a bunch of names, and there's 86 names in the book. And so I started to lose track of them. I figured, okay, I've got to figure out a way to keep track of what I call this guy back in chapter 2.
I get that too.
But I started using a lot of names of folks that I
knew,
friends and acquaintances, teachers in there, and they have a kick when they read through it and they say, okay, that's my name. That's pretty cool. But then you miss a couple, it's a couple of your boys who like, well, why is he in there and why aren't I? So you can't win with that.
What was the best part of writing the book for you?
I think proving that I could.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, when you start out and you have even though you've outlined it and you have a blank piece of paper and you think, okay, this is going to end up being 300 plus pages or so forth. It's kind of daunting, that's a huge mountain you've got to climb. And so it's when you get over the hump and you're kind of halfway through and you're kind of closing it and you're like, okay, I see the finish line. And it's like, and then you finish, you're like, man, I did it. So it's like, okay, you're first, and you've done a few of them, but can you imagine, go think back to the first one when you didn't know that you could actually finish it, and you did.
I wasn't even sure if I could do it. But then it happened and I was like, okay, let me do my second one. And I wrote the second one in like 17 writing days over a course of a month. And
wow.
And
so it gets easier, huh?
Well, for that one, I won't say that. The third one took a little longer, and this fourth one is taking even longer because I just have so much going on right now. But I get it. Like, I completely agree with you.
Well, I've got to look up your stuff now. I'm intrigued to read it. So
I would love for you to. And I would love to, get your feedback on what you think. Mine are a little or short though.
So, I'll check it out for sure.
But I also wanted to ask you, when do you think you're gonna start writing the others?
I think soon. I definitely before the year is out, I expect to have some progress made on the second book.
Okay, cool. Now I love Prince, and so I have to ask. I always ask my guests, what is your Prince? Your introductory with Prince, and what is your favorite Prince song, if you have one?
I love Prince too. I remember as a kid, when Prince just came out with "I Want to Be Your Lover," and so I Prince, Afro Prince. That's how far back I go.
Right. The Farrah Fawcett hair, Prince.
The no shirt, the white pants, and just like jamming. And I got the opportunity to see Prince. He came to our homecoming back in the 80s. So that was right when he did the 1999 and all of that stuff, and so it was pretty cool. So favorite Prince song, my gosh, there's just done so many. I think I've got to go with the first one. That I Want to Be Your Lover is
okay.
Just,
that's
I realized that he played all of the instruments on that song too.
On that album, on the For You album. Yep, he did.
That's amazing.
That's a good album. That's one of my favorite albums, actually. So good choice.
Thank you. Thank
Now,
you.
before we go, I just wanted to ask you a couple more things about your writing. During COVID, were you writing during COVID or promoting during COVID, or what was
That's
going
when
on?
I wrote Back to Dixie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it difficult for you, or do you find that because of COVID, you had actually more time and was able to focus and get it done?
Yeah, I don't know if I would have written it had it not been for COVID.
Wow.
Because I think it was, so I mentioned that I hadn't written fiction in a lot of years, and it was having the time, not having a whole lot of other things that you could do, right? So some people baked, some people did some sort of hobby. I reconnected with my passion during COVID, and so yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff from COVID, right? But the silver lining is that I reconnected with a passion of mine that I had lost along the way.
Right. As we close, I just wanted to ask you one or two more questions. I have about 5-6 minutes left. What would you tell an aspiring author that is getting started how to, what would you tell them if they're getting out there and they're trying to get started? I know becoming an entrepreneur is everything. I'm one, you're one, and it could be, like you said, daunting. What would you tell them as to getting started and getting out there writing and also doing the business side of things? What advice would you give?
From the writing side to just write, to just continue to write, find out, when you're most productive, when you're most creative.
Right.
We all have different schedules, and we all have, just different loads that work for us, but find out what your balance is and write.
Right.
As far as the business side, once you've once you've written that book, make sure that you have an author page, a website. Make sure that folks know how to contact you. Make sure you have a good cover, and you spend some time on the synopsis of your book so that folks can read really quickly what it's all about.
Right.
And just know that it's going to take time,
Right.
and don't expect to become overnight famous.
That's right.
It's going to take some time. Trust that you have the story, the right story, and don't lose confidence in yourself.
That's great advice. That is great advice, because I feel the same way. I would say the same thing if I was sitting in your seat too, because I feel like all of those things are the things that I needed to hear when I was getting started. So as we close, I just want to thank you again for coming through and blessing my podcast with your presence and with your advice and for the Ask the Author segment. This is a beautiful book, well written. I can't wait to get into it, get further into it. I'm already loving what I'm reading, and I can't wait to connect with you again to talk about it some more afterwards, after I finish. Mr. Hyde, this is an amazing piece of work, and I wish you much success in everything that you plan to do with it going forward. Any last words? What's on the horizon? What you're going to be doing next with it, or if you're
after this podcast and the energy that you've given me, Charmyra, I am going to jump right into that second book. Yes! I can't wait to go on that. And you told me that you took 17 writing hours for yours, so that's inspirational.
Yeah,
so,
it can be done.
Yeah,
it takes discipline. Like I literally had a notebook that I wrote down. I did 2,500 words a day.
Wow.
And you can do it. So I'm ready.
That's what I'm doing. I am going to write.
Yeah. Well, it's been
Thanks for having
pleasure.
Me.
Absolutely. And I want you to come back. It's been a sincere pleasure to have you. And like I said, this book is an amazing piece of work. And, I think a lot of people will get It's insightful, it's informative, and it definitely will hopefully enact people to become more engaged civically, because we need more of that, instead of, you know, people relying on other folks' opinions and not really doing the research and the work themselves.
Yeah.
I think it definitely will hopefully engage some folks to become more politically engaged and civically active.
Wow. How wonderful would that be?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Well, thank you,
And
ma'am.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Well, folks, that is it for the Purple Charm Experience podcast. Once again, I am your host, Charmyra E. Fleming, but you can call me and my special guest, Mr. Len Hyde, author of Back to Dixie. Please check him out. He's available. This book is available on Amazon. Mr. Hyde, would you like to share your website, any of your contact information?
Yep, lenhyde.com, and that should tie you in with everything that we're doing.
Yeah, check them out, everybody. I mean, this book is off the chain. It's awesome. So I think you're gonna love it. I'm loving what I'm reading so far. So thanks, guys, and that is it.
Thank you.
Okay.